Welcome to the channel. If you're new, my name is Mark Walker and you're most welcome here. Thank you to the developer for the review copy, which I've reviewed on Nintendo Switch. Close your eyes and remember your best gaming moment. The shivers up your neck when you finish Turtles in Time. The euphoria felt unwrapping Mario at Christmas, carefully opening the packaging and flicking through the manual. Or perhaps for you, it was the recent Zelda, stepping into the sunlight knowing you could go anywhere you could see. Moonlighter for me is a game with that type of impact, a special game. Let's find out why. We can all name a game that got so deeply under our skin that when you went to bed you were thinking about playing it, hearing the music in your head and just feeling like an excited kid again. What David Fenn has done with the musical score in Moonlighter is a rare thing indeed. It feels optimistic yet poignant, dangerous yet hopeful, and there are numerous subtle audio cues that could so easily have been overlooked. From the captivating shop theme that hums its pipes and percussion melodically until you open for business and it gains a touch of volume and depth. To the safety and assurance of a healing spring found just in the nick of time on a tricky dungeon run. Moments like this punctuate Moonlighter. When exploring the town, the musical score shifts to match the different vendors you approach. When in a dungeon, melodies will vary depending on the room you're in, perfectly matching the on-screen mood, never more apparent when danger arrives. HD rumble is implemented beautifully, perfectly. Small vibrations tied to the pulsing of the amulet or a quick granular jolt as you evade an enemy with a roll all add to the sense of immersion. There is rarely a sound effect not reinforced with a degree of rumble. I haven't heard music as infectious as this since Ocarina of Time. Audio is sublime. It scores 20 out of 20. You take on the burdens of Will, an aspiring shopkeeper who dreams of bigger things. During the day he tends to his small, quaint store, but when night falls, despite the warnings of those around him, he seeks out adventure in the mysterious randomly generated dungeons. His main goal is to unlock the final and fifth dungeon and uncover the mysteries and purpose of its existence. Story is delivered at the pace you, the player, choose or manage to progress. As you complete the dungeons, story will unfold through interactions with your friend and mentor, who acts as a father figure and guide, the advice of whom, as we all tend to do with our father figures, Will systematically ignores. While the narrative is rather slow, it underpins everything you're doing. It could and maybe should have been a little bit more fleshed out at times, and the tertiary tales, those of the people around the town, perhaps should have been a little more well realised. For my money, story felt a touch undervalued in relation to the rest of the game. It scores 16 out of 20. Funnily enough, just the other day, Jason and I were literally trying to think of a game that combined 2 or 3 genres. And that's exactly what Moonlighter does. You stock the shelves of your store by moonlighting, hence the name, as a fearless dungeon hunter. These randomly generated dungeons are locked bar the first of 5. Much like the Binding of Isaac, you must clear each of 3 floors, after which a boss fight completes the dungeon. If your health reaches 0, all the precious loot, bar any carried in the top row, is lost. You can return to town though by holding Y, but it will cost you a small amount of gold. This mechanic is essential when you know you're gonna die, but you want to save some of the precious goods. A little later in the game you unlock another method of returning home for a slightly higher price, but with the option of an open gate, so you can offload your wares, do a day's sales, then return once more into the fray. Weapons and armor are crafted back in town. Unlike Isaac, you can rarely find swords etc, but you may play the whole game sticking to one style of weapon. Emphasis is on player skill rather than items and gear. After a successful foray into the depths, there is a euphoria about returning with your bags laden with treasure. Placing these carefully on your shelves and choosing the right price is the next challenge. Now, at the right price, an item will sell and the customer will be pleased. Too high and they aren't happy. Too low and they're delighted, but you're losing potential revenue. This balancing act becomes hugely compulsive. Sometimes an item will be in high demand, as indicated here. During these times, you can raise the prices accordingly. Much of your playtime with Moonlighter will be spent finding the highest selling point. It's very addictive. When someone wishes to make a purchase, you must dash back to the till and sell it before they get bored and leave. Add in the occasional thief, rich client, or bargain hunter, and this is more than enough to keep you busy during the relatively short working day. Restocking the shelves as they empty, and even rugby tackling would-be thieves, all feels enjoyable. The closest comparison in these moments are games like Overcooked, but maybe a lot less stressful. To assist you in deciding the perfect price to sell items, you're given a ledger. Every time you sell too low or high, this is indicated. Items are listed in price order though, so figuring out a rough place to start gets easier the more of these pages are filled. There's something incredibly satisfying from nailing that price point and seeing the customers show their gratitude, but also knowing you got the top price you could. The system isn't incredibly detailed, and you could argue it's perhaps overly simplistic, but it feels so compelling, and having a fantastic day's sales means progressing through the dungeons always feels rewarding, and the new gear you can now afford all the more appreciated. As you build your fortune, you're given several avenues to improve both shop and town, such as this fellow who offers several shop decorations to coax a little extra cash from your clientele. At the village notice board, you're given the choice of buying in new businesses to improve the area or adding countless expensive additions to your shop. There are a good deal of upgrades to the town and shop that you can make, of which some are incredibly expensive, so you should always have a reason to delve back once more into the dungeons. So a risk-reward mechanic punctuates the experience. Combat is difficult. If you're touched by an enemy, you take a good deal of damage, and at the default setting, hard, there's enough challenge. Upgrading your armor and weapons and keeping the parts for that in your personal case become increasingly important. The block mechanic can be a little hit and miss though, and a lock-on mechanic of some sort may have been beneficial, but it works nonetheless. Special attacks with two-handed weapons, like the Zelda-like spin attack, are great but slow. Your spear and broom allow a charging thrust, which can leave you vulnerable to damage. Overall, combat feels solid, if a touch underwhelming. Very reminiscent to early Zelda titles, but there is some variety in the way you have to defeat monsters. They each attack in a unique way, requiring different methods to overcome, such as blocking to dizzy them before you attack, rolling behind them to attack from the rear, or just timing your hits and rolling away before you take damage. When you reach the last area, you face the dungeon boss. These are challenging to say the least, but reward you with massive amounts of gold and very expensive loot to sell in your shop. Interestingly, your inventory management becomes a minigame, which I loved. Some items have special properties that will affect nearby items. Small details like this meant you were always thinking about the best arrangements of loot. I haven't enjoyed inventory management in modern games, as it's often oversimplified, but turning it into a game on its own is ingenious. I used to play the original Deus Ex, and any fellow players will know only too well though that juggling the inventory was half the fun. Gameplay is solid here, but some may find the loop of looting, selling and upgrading repetitive. Contrary to this, I found it utterly compelling and always felt like I was making progress. In the times where I died and lost everything, venturing back into the dungeon via the quick retry felt like a mission of revenge. The pacing is good throughout, and in an effort to stop you from spending too much time in a single level, an unstoppable monster will eventually show up and begin to hunt you down. So there's always the pressure not to dawdle for too long on a single floor. Gameplay scores 19 out of 20. The standout visual element, other than the beautiful Animal Crossing style colour palette, are the animations. The canopy that adorns your shop blows gently in the breeze. The flames of your indoor wood burning stove flicker, and the characters are all interestingly animated. The pixel art has a frame-by-frame animation style that fits the music and gameplay perfectly. Each of the dungeons has a unique visual style that makes them feel new and different, despite the same essential design rules. Some may be saturated with pixel art, but nonetheless I would say this is a very strong implementation. Now if a sequel ever does arrive, I'd love to have a larger overworld map to extend your adventuring beyond the dungeons presented. Still, visuals are excellent and score 18 out of 20. The game is priced at £22.49 or $24.99. When you play as many games as we do for review, you rarely find a title whose higher price is justified. Sometimes, as is the case with Hollow Knight, the price is way under the value of the game. Here then we have a slightly higher price. Having sunk a good dozen or so hours into it, I would pay that price, absolutely. But the game retails for £15 on PC and it's currently on sale for £11. Why oh why developers feel the need to increase so drastically, I'm not quite sure. But that may well perplex a lot of people who will miss out on this wonderful game. But I have to say, the original PC release was filled with bugs. The experience here has been flawless, and there is so much juicy dungeoneering, is that even a word, to sink hours into. Playing on the go is a joy. Value still scores 15 out of 20. So I'm guessing you already know what the verdict is. I don't care who you are or what type of games you enjoy, Moonlighter deserves your attention. Whether the slower pace of the shopkeeping or the action and danger presented in the dungeons call you, there will be a hook for you, because each of the game's 3 unique elements is handled so well. It scores a SwitchUp score of 88%. I challenge you not to fall in love with this game. Let me know if you enjoyed this one, certain to enthrall fans of Animal Crossing, Zelda or Stardew Valley. Beautiful game. For all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. See ya!